So who exactly is this necromancer you speak of?
She calls herself Xanta the Night. She's some self-proclaimed demon from the north. The sheriff have tucked away a large chunk of change for any bloke, or blokes, who bring them our head.
I know. 10 gold. I could really use that kind of fool. Jared?
Well, it's now or never.
Well, come on, man.
Dad, who's a big Brahms guy, but I'm not even gonna play you Brahms because Brahms is the absolute fucking worst. And then I found Bach.
Bravo! Bravo! I have to say, hearing you play like that with so much control and expression.
Father lying on the floor. The doctors couldn't help him. Permanent vegetative state, they all said. He must have tripped over something and fallen on the back of his head. And no one saw what Ellie saw. The fire. A weak, fragile flame, like a lit match in a dark, humid room. Struggling to light up the world.
Welcome to the Onstage Music Podcast, everyone, the show where artistry meets authenticity. Today's guest is a true Renaissance man of the performing arts. Name is Logan, I believe it's Schmucker, right?
Exactly. Well done. I am related to the jelly people, actually.
Really?
Smuckers. Yeah, so they moved in like the 1940s from Germany, and they took out all the German sounding to blend in with the Americans. So they took out the CH and all that, so they became Smuckers.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, fun fact.
Now, you're a magnetic presence on both stage and screen, and when I saw that you're a bass-baritone baritenor with a commanding voice, and you spent 22 years as a professional, classically trained violinist, I was like, I gotta have this guy on here.
Oh, man.
Like, he's not only an actor, but he's not only a baritone, he's a singer, classic. I'm just going, what? Are you like multi-instrumentalist right there? So everyone else just.
And you're a tenor yourself, yeah?
I am. Well,
sorry, I interrupted. Sorry.
So Logan here is also a skilled pianist, guitarist, professional chef, and he's also, I don't know if I pronounce this, an Isshynryu
Karate.
Karate practitioner.
Yeah.
Wow. You're Logan of all trades.
Oh,
You're also
exactly.
a competitive athlete in soccer, tennis, and basketball. Wow, is there something you don't do?
Oh, man. Well, that's a great question. I think what I don't do is relax. I'm such a bad relaxer. I do a lot of activities, and I'm a very active dude, and I like to do sports or I go crazy. I like to do music or I go crazy. So I think if I'm
that's why I have
sitting
the
still-
podcast is for people like you. You can do everything. I mean, now I know you're based in New York City. I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Everyone, Logan's a graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and the Toronto Academy of Acting.
Yeah,
His
amen to
performances
that.
span theater, television, and film, and each role infused with emotional depth and musical finesse. Now,
That's
I don't know
great.
if anybody here recognizes you, but he was Victor in AMC's The Walking Dead, Dead City. And from his amazing leading roles in A Conflict of Love Interest, 2024, in the short film Ellie. And on stage, you brought the iconic Fiddler to life in Fiddler on the Roof at Broadway, the musical Circus in Sacramento. Now, you're merging your acting and violin mastery in a performance to remember, because from your psychological thrillers like Devoured to heartfelt dramas like Well-Rounded and E7 Spiccato, your versatility knows no bounds.
Oh,
And beyond your spotlight, you're a thoughtful artist with a global perspective. So much about you here.
wow.
And
Did you write this?
you're gonna love this. Fluent in dialects like Cockney and Irish, and always exploring the deeper layers of the human experience.
Where did
I
you
write
get
a lot,
this?
and I have a team too.
No
So,
way.
everyone, today we're going to dive into the mind of a true creative force, Logan Schmucker. Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have you here. Hello there.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I love this. Wow, I can't believe how many dialects and instruments you know, and you're such an actor and a chef. You know karate. I'm gonna be away. I'm gonna be careful about you. I don't want you to be
Good thing we're
yeah
over
fighting me
online
about
right
the
now.
screen here. You know.
Yes.
So wow, Logan, I'm so happy that you're here, and I waited all this time to actually meet you. I'm so happy I did.
I was so pleasantly surprised when I got your message.
Yeah,
That was very sweet.
I knew I had to do a deep dive in your whole life, and I'm thinking, what else is he an airline pilot? Does he drive a helicopter? Or,
Oh, it's a dream of mine to have my pilot's license. That's totally, I mean, right on the money. I mean, 'cause
really?
I'm from Ohio, and the Wright brothers, they invented the plane. They're from Ohio. I think they invented the plane so they could fly out of Ohio. But I want my pilot's license so bad. I would love
Wow.
to fly.
Well, let's go back to the beginning then. So, what was your life growing up in Ohio, and the defining moment when you looked up and said, "I want to do violin and acting"?
I always knew I wanted to be an actor. I remember I think one of my earliest memories. I remember I was in like a cathedral during Christmas Eve Mass, and I remember I was like doing a scene I just came up with, and I was like, probably 4 years old, and then I remember it was like I was playing some father saying goodbye to his daughters who were going on a plane, and I just remember I was so engrossed in the scene, then I turned around, and half the congregation was looking at me, and I just kind of knew one I was terrified, but also I kind of liked that. And then violin, I started when I was 7. My parents thought it was a good idea. I was also doing karate at the time and soccer, and I have a lot of energy. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I was really enjoying a lot of activities. And then they put a violin in my hands, and then there was kind of like this. It felt like a Star Wars moment at the time, where first lesson I go to talk to this teacher who doesn't really teach 7 years at this point, and he like put a violin bow, or he put a pencil in my hand, and he was like, that's basically how you hold a violin bow. And then it just came really weirdly easy, and I loved it. And I was playing in pit orchestras, but I always knew I would rather be on stage. I loved Pirates of Penzance. I was in the pit orchestra during a performance of that, and I remember looking on stage, and there's a bunch of guys dressed as pirates, guys and gals dressed as pirates. I'm like, fuck, I want to be a pirate, not in the pit, So, yeah, but then I stuck with violin, and then it's been cool to like combine them. It's been a long time to like build these two like trees that are the branches are finally crossing.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of violinists and thinking I want to take up the violin myself, but many of them are very engrossed in what they do. Like, you can do several like Mozart and Chopin and many of those classical works. Like, that must be amazing how you do it. The energy that you feel, and the adrenaline that goes through you.
And I mean, I feel like music education, I think, is one of the best gifts to give somebody, because you get to go to so many different worlds as a kid, and empathy and all that, and there's so much expression, and also just to like learn from these people that it's hard to even encapsulate. Mozart, Beethoven, these guys are Bach. They really stand the test of time and create things that people resonate with today. So it's great to have like, exposure like that, like literature, I think the more people that would have a music education, the better the world would be.
Yeah. How does playing the violin influence your emotional depth as an actor?
Um, I remember it was the emotional side of music that I feel like I connected to right away, and it was the technical part where it takes a lot of training and a lot of discipline and sacrifice to to build that technical tree of things. But it's crazy, like when you come up with playlists for a character, you come up with all this. I mean, you have such a. I feel so lucky to have such a huge like lexicon and library of things that I'm like, oh, you know what? This kind of reminds me of, like Hindemith, or this reminds me of Gershwin, and like not just points of view, but also cultural lenses that you can look at things. And yeah, there's so many. It's like reading, being well read. I think there's so many just doors that are open because of this particular point of view.
Hmm.
Certain textures that you get accustomed to, but also listening is such a big thing in acting, and I feel really lucky that my listening was developed so early, because you have to listen so intently and particularly as an actor. That was trained from violin and music. So hopefully
What
that answers your question.
Yeah, what piece of music feels most like a reflection of your soul?
At the moment, let's say there is, I think Mendelssohn it's the Italian symphony.
Mhm.
It's something that's like, 'cause, the past year has kind of been a wild ride. So I would say there's the beginning bars of Mendelssohn Italian goes, so it kind of feels like this wild roller coaster that's very exciting and almost off the rails at all time. So either that or like Mendelssohn Octet. That one's sweet. It's just a lot of energy, and it's also summertime. So I can also pivot and say like the Waters of March by Jobim, which is like a bossa nova tune, because like summer vibes. Hopefully that's a good answer.
Can you play like Winter and
Vivaldi.
Vivaldi? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I studied those when I was a kid. It's been a while. Oh man, I've never played like the full 4 seasons with an orchestra as the soloist. So I would love to do that though sometime.
That sounds amazing. How do you interpret silence in music compared to silence in acting?
Beautiful question, because the silences are most of the time more important than the notes, and especially in film acting, you really want to hear the silence of the characters and see them process information and be immersed in this world. So, can you repeat the question again? I want to make sure it's a good answer.
Yep. So how do you interpret silence in music compared to silence in acting?
Yeah, beautiful question. I mean, it's also because all those silences are different, because you're carrying what you just did into this moment of suspense, and then it like roller coasters into the next moment where the silence is broken. And it's also interesting because it's also what your scene partner gives you. So sometimes it's not for you to define, but it's for you to create, like while you're with your scene partner, like both of you are carrying the silence. Hopefully that's a good answer.
Yeah, it's like that sound. So you have in Winter, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a silence or a pause there, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I love that one. Yeah, yeah. Do you think you have the most transformative experience you've had while performing live?
Mhm. I will say that Walking Dead, playing the Bach Chaconne. Bach is like one of my favorites for real. Playing the Bach Chaconne, which is also like one of the coolest things ever written by a human being for others to interpret, in a cathedral, with also like really high stakes because, you don't really have that much time to film on TV. And there's so much, like, it's not to like bring up, it's like a Fiddler on the Roof, but like when you're like, when there's like 100 people in one set, in one cathedral, thousands of dollars of equipment, a whole storyline, and it's all balancing like on this tiny little like string woven by other tiny little strings being played by horsehairs. That feels like a miraculous event. And it's crazy when you go through life and, you more appreciative, obviously, of the fact that everybody's here sacrificing time away from their families, time away from their friends. They choose to spend time in this one given moment. And why is that? To try to either like capture something or to help other people. I remember that was one of the cool, because talking about silences, the moments like leading up to the rolling of that and playing that, and then hearing this music resonate in this grand cathedral and getting it back to you, and also like playing it through the lens of another character, really under duress, playing as if your life depends on it. You can't really beat that as like far as, moments. So that was, especially, I was playing violin publicly, you always kind of deal with performance anxiety. So having a whole arc that most people won't know of my own relationship with performing music, that is now this other, it's become a gift that I get to, other people get to watch it and know that this whole journey I went on is also now a lot of other people's journey to maybe get a glimpse into. It's beautiful.
And when you play the violin, like I know if you play, do you have to go like just to test the acoustics to make sure that your violin's music is going to resonate throughout the whole building?
Oh, no, I mean, it's interesting, like over time, you do have to get to know. I don't, this is just me doing it. I don't know what this is, some gesticulation that came from the ether. But yeah, it's interesting when you play different venues, you have to know, you kind of have three minds when you're playing. You're listening as somebody who enjoys music. You're also listening as the audience's point of view. So you have to know what it sounds like in the back of the house, just like you're an actor. So, your bow strokes will be different based on where you're at. So like in that cathedral, it's such a live space, so you don't have to use as much bow and you project so deeply.
Yeah. Are you familiar with a girl group called Bond? And I think there's a bunch of other, I think there's a group of guys, they play like the cello and stuff. When you listen to music, is it always going to have a violin in it because that's what you play, and then you're also... Yeah.
I think I love to listen to music that doesn't have violin in it because it's a little bit easy. Like when I'm relaxing, I'm probably going to listen to classical piano. There's something so soothing about piano and like Spanish guitar. I particularly find those, because there's also not like trauma built into those guys. So, I'm not like, I've kind of worked over a lot of the traumas of violin, but I think those two particularly have always been a lot more relaxing to me. So I'll listen to those ones,
So tell me that, it's amazing that you're bass baritone, like baritone, you got a very low voice like this.
Yeah. Well, you probably can't hear it now because like when you don't, I haven't warmed up my voice in a while, but yeah, it's like bass baritone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I was always given the lower parts, and I mean, when I was a kid out of the womb, I remember just having a really deep voice, and my family used to say it all the time about how deep my voice was. But it's also interesting, like your relationship to your own voice changes, especially having a piece of wood that rests here that you like play. So it's interesting, especially going to acting school when you're learning how to undo certain tensions, and then when you really start exploring your voice and getting your diaphragm involved, it's crazy how much your voice changes. And it's also equally crazy how much it changes when you go through a global pandemic where you're, all this stuff.
Can you sing and play the violin at the same time?
I have not done that yet. I have not, but I'm excited.
Like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. And
yeah, totally. It's crazy because you're like,
Yeah.
I don't think it would be super hard. I don't know. I feel like that'll be the next couple of years. I want to do that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Like
So
play Blackbird.
whatever made you want to pick up the piano and the guitar, and then you did like wow.
So piano. When I was studying music school,
Mm-hmm.
also I started when I was doing violin. I was doing theory lessons,
Mm-hmm.
and it's way easier to picture theory in your head when you play piano. So a lot of times I was just kind of doing that from the theory point of view, so I could understand kind of the blueprints of the music, of like understanding, okay, we're starting at C, so that's tonic, and then we go, 1 4 5 6 5 1, so that sort of thing. It's much easier to see the chord progressions.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also became such a freeing thing to just kind of noodle, and it's way easier to noodle on piano because you're not worried about the bow and sound quality. So you're just like, press button and you hear sound, big
Mm-hmm.
boom, 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 boom. So and then there's this guy called Barry Harris, who was an incredible piano player. He was like one of the last bebop piano players of alive, really. And the way he played sounded like silver. So I would just listen to him during the pandemic, and it was, yeah, I love piano. And like, if I could play Rachmaninoff piano concertos, I think I would be so happy in life. But I just have to always, observe from afar.
That's amazing. Like they say, life is music, and you actually envelop life because you play everything. You know?
Well, it's great to have those point of views of the instruments. Um, and guitar, that was because I had a lot of friends who played guitar, and I was living in Brooklyn, and we were all roommates, and then like we would all go to our like day jobs and stuff, and after work we would all come home and just jam. And I think it's so great to have those points of view about music because like classical violin, there's something a little bit like, oh, he plays Mozart and Beethoven and all the classical pieces, and oh, very nice and fancy, and Leonard Bernstein, and
Yeah.
So then when you go to guitar, you're like, oh yeah, you're just like, how do you just play with friends, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you bring that point of view to the classical music? So it takes away the preciousness of it, and it becomes again like not just service, but yeah, kind of service because it's just it's storytelling, it's to help people, it's expression, it's all those things. So focusing on that instead of like, oh well, I noticed when you were playing that C major scale, you were slightly flat on that B natural, and when you're in first position, it's so easy to be out of tune, and you're like, that's not the point of music. So
Yeah, that multi-talent that you are with music and acting. What emotional truths do you seek to uncover through your characters?
I think what's really interesting is for the longest time, I felt like if I was doing a character, playing the violin was easier for me because I wasn't worried so much about the notes and playing it right. And then because in acting, a lot of the time your teachers say it's about subtext. What's the subtext of the scene? What is your character trying to do to another character? Like, actable verbs. And then also when you put that into the violin, so
Mm-hmm.
you take the music, let's translate that into a monologue, and then turn it into an active monologue. What are you doing? So like you take the opening bars of like Sibelius,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to the Sibelius concerto, you're trying to like mystically welcome people into a frigid landscape. That gives you a way easier context of telling a story than, okay, you have to play this like D minor passage. This, and that unlocked a lot for me. Deeper truths. I think it's also there's a couple really interesting people that I would love to like biopics, like Dmitri Shostakovich. He was this like USSR conductor or composer, and he wasn't really on board with what was going on in the country at the time in like the 1940s, 50s Russia. And he was making music, and he was very well aware that there was composers that were getting kidnapped from their families, and their families would never see them again. So I remember actually, I think one of the reasons why I really gravitated back towards acting, reading the bios of all these composers, because their lives are so interesting, and I just was always so like astounded that there were people that were like nature nurture created that could process the world in like the way an architect sees blueprints. They could see the architecture of sound and how their visualization was different. Um, yeah, I think those are some. I think that's an answer. I think that's an answer.
Yeah,
These are great questions.
that's amazing. Do you think your training at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts shaped your approach to storytelling?
For sure. They're a very Meisner based school. They have, I was really lucky that they were such an open school. So they weren't like doctrine, like we weren't indoctrinated to the Meisner technique, but our scales for acting was the Meisner exercise, which are these
Yeah.
things called, um, so the exercise was basically somebody was doing an activity and somebody would knock at the to two people. Somebody's doing an activity that they really care about, emotionally invested in. Somebody would come into the door, knocking, and they would have a hidden want, and would turn into this improvisation. Structured
Mhm.
improv is what we would call it.
Wow.
Um, and Meisner was all about put the focus on your scene partner, and that is how you wouldn't think about yourself or self awareness. Because I think a lot of times what acting you really want is somebody who's completely loses that sense of self
Mm.
and is immersed in the given circumstances. So, like right now, like you would have these little tricks of like I'm observing you, and like how you just kind of cracked a smile, and you're looking away, and then you look back at me, and now you know what I mean. So like
Mm.
when you really like laser in on your scene partner, it's all about the other person, and then it's not about you. Because I used to get such bad nerves, and I realized it's actually kind of a selfish thing to focus on the nerves instead of the story. So if you always reroute to, I love the story, I love telling stories, and I actually really care about other people, then you put the care on them instead of yourself, then it always ends up okay,
Yeah,
especially if it's messy. Go ahead.
I've spoken to many other actors, and I mentioned about the emotional part of the part and crying. How would you approach that?
I feel like I've been pretty lucky with crying. Not lucky, but like I feel like even though industry is kind of wild, but I still feel like I'm pretty open hearted for people, and I think it's about that empathy and emotional openness.
Hmm.
And I think it's just connecting to the fact that we live in a very beautiful world, and always having that and being in a scene. I feel like I'm pretty easily like moved by things. I still cry pretty easily. So it's pretty easy. Like, if somebody tells me, okay, so, there's somebody you really love and they're in pain, then I could easily just kind of get worked up about it. Cause you want to be like kind of porous,
Hmm.
like I know I've heard that word a lot. And maybe it's a bit like, "Ooh, do you have to be porous as an actor?" But like, you want to be really, I don't know how to describe it, but you feel like you're a verb instead of a noun. You feel
Yeah.
like you're just so immersed in doing instead of like I am a rock. You got to be like water, as the great Bruce Lee says,
Yeah.
be like water.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because emotions flow, and you like the more that you can just like open and let the emotion do whatever the hell it is, and you let go of that control, the more
Mhm.
control you have.
You have to be disciplined in your part. You have to become that person.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of method acting? Like becoming this really wicked character, you're going to take it home with you? How do you remove it from yourself? And
I was doing one of my favorite productions. We were doing Hamlet. I was playing Laertes, and I remember
I
the director. Yeah, I loved it, and I got to play.
love
Me
the
too.
mercifulness. Yeah, I
Uh,
love Hamlet. I
uh,
love it all.
Me too. And I think Shakespeare and classical music are like
Mhm.
cousins. They go really well together. Um, I got to play electric violin in that production, but it was also like our director Sheila had such a beautiful practice for us
Mhm.
that before we would start the play, we would like pretend like we were putting the jacket on of the play, and then after the rehearsal, we would take the jacket off just to
Wow.
make sure you could like do these little like it's tiny little habits that just like, it's also like totems in Inception. If
Mhm.
you know the movie Inception, how they
Yeah.
had little like they each had like a totem that was specific to them that just reminded them of who they were and all that. Like just because like the method is really just kind of doing the homework of like who is this character, where they're given circumstances, how do they see the world, and everybody's got their own way in.
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
and the tricky part, Victor was so similar to me, and I felt like he was really kind of an extension of myself, and it was like it came at a time where it was really kind of weirdly similar. Like we were both violinists that survived a global pandemic, and we were both there and kind of found ourselves with this group of people that we didn't always identify with, but we were kind of there out of survival. And we were in this place where we would kind of meet interesting people
Mhm.
and always get to hear their stories. And it was like I found like that was so much of like what was going on in the screenplay that I could just be like, okay, that is me, that this part's me. But then there's also the little dials of like, okay, will I get eaten in my day-to-day life? So as Logan, probably less likely. I mean, I'm in New York, so you also never know. There's a lot of rats, and there's also a lot of weird people. But yeah, so you kind of figure out how you're different, how you're similar, and then you can like empathy put on their jacket, so to speak. Um, but then also making sure when you're back in your hotel, you got your totems of like, this is who I am,
Yeah.
and here's the grass beneath my feet, and here's the sky, and all this shit that just like, or listening to a piece of music that's also a totem too. So you don't just like swim in the ocean of your character.
Wow. So, was there a role that challenged your personal beliefs the most, and how did you navigate that?
Oh, I remember there's this character called Tim in Suburbia,
Hmm.
and he liked to use a lot of hateful language, and that was really hard to do, especially like this was in acting school. So I felt like I was just like, you're opening up, and like you're opening up, and you're kind of realizing some of your,
Hmm.
your tendencies emotionally. Um, like I repress anger, for instance. Like I'm not saying I do that. I'm just, giving you examples, but like it's so interesting. And then you have this guy that's like really has a lot of hateful speech, and that was hard because of like I still think about a frog that I stepped on when I was playing soccer outside when I was like 9 years old sometimes, and I feel bad about it. So um yeah, those rules are tough. Those are tough when you play the guy that's like somebody who's so deeply like in pain and so insecure that they have to like, you know, just like say nasty, nasty things to other people. Because it's really not in my tool belt how I deal with people most of the time, except, if I'm walking on the street in New York and somebody almost hits me off, I can pretty easily go like, you fucking jackass.
Yeah. How do you balance that vulnerability and control when performing intense scenes?
um, I think there was a really nice moment where I was talking with Lisa Emery. She was another actor in Walking Dead. She's Ozark, incredible actress. She's in so much, and she just did Lunar Eclipse on stage in New York too. I remember her and I were chit chatting about. There's just like this little. There's a zone that you get into, and it's really private, and it's really quiet, and it's personal to you.
Hmm.
And if you take time, especially when you're on like a crazy set where there's so much going on, and you just take a couple seconds and center yourself in that space where everything is possible. That's kind of self-care, and just all that self-care of having your little bubble protecting you, and knowing that it's also just play. And it's also a testament to the cultivation of that space depending on the set. And like the Walking Dead people, they're freaking awesome and great, and they construct these grand play places for you to just like pretend, and everybody was so great. So the more that you feel like safe, and that you can like push that a little bit further, it's also about relaxing. The more
Hmm.
that you like are relaxed and breathing and open, it comes pretty naturally if you have like faith in what you're doing and you have faith in the people around you, and you, because you breathe differently when you have faith and trust everything.
Yeah, and especially when you're on stage or in front of a camera or whatever, like you have to be present.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you on set or on stage, to be present?
Well, we live in such like a world that is the antithesis of presence. You know, like right now while I'm talking to you, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tabs open on my laptop.
Wow.
So I like, you know, and my phone's right here and buzzing with things. So like there's all these like ping boom, 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 ping pong things where like you want your mind to be a magnifying glass, just like, and that's presence, singular focus on one thing. Because that's also like relationship with time, where you can ride time like a wave. And if your mind is in like bajillion different places, how can you expect to be present? A lot of time it's in breath too, like true deep breaths from the diaphragm, like we were talking about earlier, because your body's an active participation with presence. So it's a mind body unity. Yeah, and breath and silence.
Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, what kind of cultural influences have you had mostly impacted your creative voice?
Cultural impacts. Well, you know, we were talking about Isshynryu Karate. And I remember, I mean, I studied that for a long time and also did like the Japanese tea ceremonies. And there was something about that really impacted me a lot, because I still practice yoga a lot too. And I thought it's about mindfulness and doing simple tasks, that practice. It's like if you practice how you do, what's the phrase? How you do anything is how you do everything. So if you approach one thing this way and try to be mindful and just, you know, it's one step at a time. So I get a lot of inspiration from those kind of Japanese principles, because Isshynryu is from the island of Okinawa. A lot of that breath, and really there's a lot more in solar plexus and diaphragm. I remember, so like a ki, that was something in Isshynryu, which literally means spirit shout. So it was crazy to like kind of give these seeds as a kid of like, you know, your spirit is in the diaphragm, and then to be in like voice class when I'm like, you know, 21, 22, hearing these things about you need to use your diaphragm to activate your whole body and to speak through that. And it's through your core that you're really alive. So there's that. I mean, I feel like I do believe in reincarnation. I believe I was, I believe in reincarnation. I believe, I mean, I do believe in the afterlife too, but it's like, it's interesting because also principles in physics of like, you know, energy never is lost. It's just transformed. I believe those, like the laws, Newton's laws is easily transferable as into our philosophical and existential life. I feel like those are very true things, you know, like an object at rest will remain at rest, or an object in motion remains in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Those things are like, it's not just objects, it's everything. I think physics, how things move in space.
It's interesting to know your beliefs. My father was a firm believer in reincarnation, but I myself, I'm a Christian, and I believe that Jesus Christ came to earth, who's God in flesh, and he presented and wrote the Bible for us. And there is an afterlife, but it's with him, depending which you believe. But it's amazing what people believe in that respect, especially with you, it's reincarnation. Others, it's like people saying there's an afterlife, but what happens after life? Some people don't believe that. People believe in heaven or hell.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised Christian too, and I still believe. Oh, it's just crazy when you walk through life. Just the synthesis of everything. Because I mean, those stories the Bible. I mean, it's not just story. There's so much that is so good for people to read. You know, the, oh man, and it's crazy. Like when I mean, I have a very like personal connection with Saint Michael, to be honest. And I mean, it's crazy guidance when you're lost, and I could really talk a lot about this too. But
I know.
I mean, I do believe in an afterlife because it's interesting when people pass on that you're close to. I feel like there is like a window. There's an invisible window in the universe that opens up where kind of miracles happen. You know, it's a very saturated period of time where people that you're close to, I don't know, but it's also a sensorial experience.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And all the
I think
things
it's
that
real.
and all the things that are talking, all the things that are happening in Hollywood these days, everything. How are you yourself would stay grounded while navigating that entertainment industry? How do you do it?
That's a
Mental
great
health.
question.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it too because there's so much. There's a lot of noise, and again, it's like, how do you find? It's about staying really solid in who you are and having a really good base of people around you, and you know, you're dealing with your beliefs like a garden, so you're watering them every day. You practices that are meaningful to you, and you know, it's sometimes it's the practice and it's the act of doing these things. It's not just like the motivation, because motivation is kind of a response and not an inciting force. You know, you do something and then you get motivation is almost motion. So it's like, you know, get the ball rolling, and then that's the motivation. So I think maintaining your values, checking in on your values constantly. Because I think it's also when you tell stories that matter is when they're coming from somebody who's pretty set in their value system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying perfect, because have you seen what's it called? Conclave.
Oh, the one with the Conclave. No, I haven't seen it yet, but I know what it's
The new
about.
Pope.
One
It's
with Anthony Hopkins, isn't it?
Ray Fiennes.
Ray Fiennes, yes. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so there's so many monologues about faith in that movie that are just like gobsmacking good. Oh my gosh. Because there's like this monologue where he talks about, you know, there is going to be doubt on the road of faith, but there is no faith without doubt. And it's so beautiful. Highly recommend. Highly recommend.
Yeah, that's a movie where they choose the next pope, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
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 Logan, how do you define authenticity in your work? You ever suffered from imposter syndrome?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I don't come from like a family of artists, or like you know, I'm definitely not a nepo baby. You know, so it's really interesting to have come up and like trying to find your voice in the community, because there's so much. There's also, you know, there's that Japanese philosophy called ikigai, which is like this beautiful like tool to kind of figure out. You'd have like circles that creates these Venn diagrams that create smaller Venn diagrams that centers on finding meaning in life. And it's really interesting because it's like, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What can you make money? What does the world need? And all these circles intersect and create meaning. But what was the question again? I know I had a train of thought. It left me for 2 seconds, but I'm still there.
Yeah, like how do you define authenticity in your work?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that tool is useful also to like get your dials in, right? Because authenticity, it's interesting because it's a descriptor. It's a descriptor after the fact, you know. I think authenticity there includes truth, surrender, honesty, sacrifice, service, Um, so I think as long as I maintain that, you know, I'm not worried about how I look on camera. I'm worried more about how am I taking care of my scene partner
Mm.
and doing the work and focusing on the work is how you stay authentic, because otherwise it becomes like and there's nothing wrong with it. And this is just like a very quick example. I don't know where you see, there's certain films that you see where you could tell people are like posing or like, look how cool I look. You know what I mean? But so I try not to do that and to fail. And like imperfection is authentic.
Yeah.
Um, so the more you can surrender to those forces of, you know, acting without controlling yourself, I think that's how you get authenticity.
Yeah, like your part as Victor, like you mentioned earlier, but how did you emotionally prepare for that role? The quiet resilience in the Walking Dead city. How did you do that?
I was actually so happy he didn't have a whole lot of dialogue, obviously, except for the top of season episode 2. But I liked how much he was quiet because you could say so much more with behavior that way. Um, and also because he's a very supportive force for Negan. So I I kind of prepared. I walked. There was a couple days where I just walked through New York City. I had some music on, and sometimes I would take music off. I just walked through the entire like island of Manhattan, basically, and seeing if I could find little moments where Victor had memories.
Hmm.
I remember I walked into St. Patrick's Cathedral. This is actually close to Easter when we were starting to film last year, and so there was a Easter mass going on at St. Patrick's. I just remember going. They were doing the Stations of the Cross, and I remember I walked in, and because the whole, like the series a lot of the action that I was involved in was actually in the crypt of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Um, so I wanted to know what that place was like. Um, and I just remember having there's a lot of emotions going on because there's also like a lot about, he was a lot about helping people. And I remember I was really happy that this was like a story, like this was a guy, and I don't completely remember because I was a little like just mortified seeing myself on the screen. But I remember I really wanted it to be a thing where Victor was like deliberately choosing. He knew that he had an intuition things might not go right by helping Negan, but the choice to help and to extend kindness, even though he lived in an unforgiving world, was a powerful thing. And so I just kind of walked with that, like, make the choice to be kind, make the choice to spread light, even despite that there's so much shit going on in the world. I feel like that was my hook in, you know.
Yeah, and working with what Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I think his name is.
Yep. Yeah.
What was it like working with the guy? It was amazing.
He's
Wow.
great. I mean, he reminded me a lot of like both my dad and my grandpa. So I feel like that was super
Jack.
helpful. Oh, he's so good. He can do so much with so little. And, it's just so great to see him. Like, he could do something like this and take you into this whole world. And you're like, holy shit. No wonder he's a legend.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I think there was some immediate, like, as soon as we met, we were like, we knew that we were kind of cut from a similar cloth. He even like mentioned some stuff to me. He's like, man, you just really, I remember seeing your audition and I was hiding as a PA on that Zoom call. And I just remember thinking, dang, he just reminds me a lot of me when I was a kid. And I'm like, well, yeah, kid. I had a full grown beard. No, I was kidding, but no, he was great. He was super great. And, but also like, he wasn't just an actor on set; he's a producer, and so he had a lot of stuff going on. So I was also just trying to, I observed him a lot. I try not to be like creepy about it, but like I was just gonna, watching him on set and seeing how he did things. It's pretty cool being a number one, like number one on the call sheet, and just watching him how to be a leader, and I learned so much from just watching. Same thing with Jelko, because he's a dude who's just killer credits. And it's not, the career's not about credits, but like
Wow.
what he's done is beautiful, and he's had a beautiful career because he's always showed up and done the work, and you can tell based on meeting the guy in 2 seconds what kind of actor he is, because he's really quiet, really thoughtful, really respectful of everybody. And I could say that everybody, literally every single person that was on that set was like, you know, it was so overwhelmingly something because there's so much positivity, and it was like a family because these people, they've been doing this for like 14 years at this point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to come onto a show like that, and it's crazy because I already feel so long ago in the past, but it was so, you know, you could tell these people have like family connections, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that made it really easy just to like come in and bring this like crazy flavor. It was fun, you know, like coming in and it was super fun.
Must be fun being an actor, especially working alongside like Jeffrey Dean Morgan and others. It's amazing. What about your most transformative moment for you when you were filming a conflict of love interest?
Oh, that was so fun because we were all over New York, and you know, like we're doing montages in Coney Island, like you know, little date montages. Where
I like
like,
the 9/11 tribute wall. I like that.
oh yeah, it was so. I mean, there's so much all over New York. Shooting at Central Park, that's a dream. And there was even this beautiful moment where we're shooting this little scene where my character brings coffee to the leading lady, Hetty Nasser, who's like in everything right now too. She's popping off. And it was like sunny, but it was also a light rain, and we're in Central Park, and then there's like kind of a glimmer of a rainbow in the back, and it's just like this is heaven. Just filming, and that's again talking about the afterlife is interesting to like realize that, you know, whatever you focus on in this limited time that we have on this earth, you can transform this time we have into like a glimpse of heaven, right? Depending on how you focus on things, what you feed, like your attention, your focus. So that was a glimpse of like it felt to me. And you know, when your body reacts like that, you know you're in the right kind of field or you're in the right setting. You know, that was after, you know, global pandemic and actors strike. So it's the crawling and climbing to get to those points in life where you're like, oh man, feels like you're really doing the shit now, you know?
I saw your reels. You're a very proficient actor. You're very good. What about in Ellie? Your character anchors the story. How did you build that emotional core?
Oh, that was a case of there was a lot that was happening outside of, well, there's so much that had just happened leading up to that. And it's crazy. I mean, it's super fortunate to have an outlet like acting to be able to put it into. But let's say there was some like family complications going on in a couple of different ways. And then I also, 2 weeks before we started shooting that, I got hit by a car while I was on an e-bike on the way to a date. Yeah, so that shit rocked my world. And I just remember I was at such like a point after all that, because this was like 3 months of just like going through hell. And then there were just moments of where I just got to give it to this other person in this film, because this guy was like a vegetative patient, and his sister basically comes into the dream world and is like, hey, you're dreaming. I want to bring you back to reality. And so it's just like those moments where art imitates life, but then life imitates art. All this stuff is like hand in hand, where you're like, your world's kind of shattering and collapsing, and then what you thought was true is not true, and all this. But then the resilience of family ties brings you together. You know, family is such a huge thing for me. Family, friendships, those are huge in my life. And that's why it's great to be a part of stories that like show resilience in family or in friendship. Because those are relationships that can get you through the shittiest, you know, another shitty lesson.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You played the character Lucas Sharp, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What personal experience did you draw on that, on romantic conflict?
Oh, yeah. Well, he was a jazz pianist, so that was really intimidating because I identify more as a violinist than a pianist.
Mhm.
For me, for him, well, it's easy because everybody has questions about love. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to find that person. We're kind of like fed this like narrative since we're out of the womb, basically, that there's one person out there that we were made for each other, and it's interesting to come to terms with that narrative that we were given as a kid, and synthesize that with an adult point of view, and navigate those doubts. And in your 20s in New York City is a crazy place to be. The dating scene's really wild, so there's a lot to pull from. In that. So yeah, it's for that. I think I would say, yeah, just those moments in life where you meet someone really special, and then not being certain if it's going to pan out the way you imagine it might. I guess that's I'll give you that. Yeah, love.
So how much of Logan is in Lucas Sharp?
Quite a bit too. I mean, it's like I feel lucky because that one's like I just felt like it was so. I remember when I got the audition sides, it was like very last second I was able to put it in and send it to the directors, which is also like really Lucas because the way that he starts, he's like late, he's running late to a meeting, he's bumping into a bunch of people on the street, he just by the nick of time shows up, and also it's like the wrong day. So it's just so funny. Like he's kind of a mess. He's a little bit more of a mess than me, or maybe not. I don't know. But yeah. But he's also like a goofball and super fun. I think he's a little bit more sure of himself than I am. But I learned a lot about that through doing that whole project too, because it was just like that was one of the biggest projects I had done at the time, and there was so many people involved, and there's something that the introduction of responsibility into a project of like, I want to do this right because there's a lot of people who are sacrificing to do this. That was a lesson learned from that one. There's a lot of Lucas. There's a lot of Lucas and Logan and Lucas stuff too. Plus, the LS. Yeah.
Yeah, you also played Sten in the board. Now, how did you interpret the psychological tension in that?
That was a cool story because when I was given the audition material, it's like a Cain and Abel story at the beginning. And that was like kind of the root of this film, were these brothers, this brother dynamic. And again, it's that family thing. Because really at the heart of it, it's about Sten and it's about his brother Ivar. And it's about forgiveness. It's about guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually really, I found that one really interesting because, when the director had talked about her vision, it was like, the lens of Roman Catholicism in a world that also included Norse paganism. So it was like having these two very different doctrines kind of clashing in a world and seeing how people reacted with the shrapnel. And the role of guilt in people's lives, how it can drive them, and how sometimes guilt shies people away from either accepting love and forgiveness or being cast into their own prisons of their own machinations. And at any moment, we can actually choose forgiveness, salvation too. Which again, that kind of goes back to our, talking of, it's very Jesus is getting crucified, and then, on his right and left, there's other men being crucified. And then there's the guy who goes, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And so he passed and he was forgiven because he chose to be forgiven too.
Today, thou shalt be with me in paradise. Yeah, I love that.
It's beautiful, but then also you have the people, the doubters, because I think that the level of love that exists from whatever, however you interpret it, whether it's Christianity, there is this universal love that if you choose to believe in it, it is there, always is there, if you just let it in. Or you can like, oh, I want to do things my way, or if I can think this through or do this. But sometimes like faith and all that is a simple answer. So grappling with somebody who,
Hmm.
back to the question, Sten is trying to offer that salvation to his brother the entire time over the span of 1,000 years, a long time. And he's a ghost at this point. They're in the other plane, and his brother's kind of in limbo or in hell, um, looking for this. He doesn't even realize that all he's been looking for is not just an apology, but like, forgiveness to himself.
Hmm.
So that was pretty easy to tap into too. Again, being raised like Roman Catholic, having that lens of things, and again walking through the gray morality of life, and realizing sometimes people feed their demons out of fear, where there's like you can just see the sun and know that there's warmth.
Hmm. What did you learn from working with directors like Andrew Rasmussen and Ellie Jorn?
Oh, Eli Jornet.
Yeah,
Um,
Jornet.
Yeah, right. I called him Eli Jordan the longest time too, and then I saw last year during like a Comic Con it was Eli Jordan. I'm like, God, I hope I never said his last name to him to his face. Um, but that's a good question. Trust yourself.
Hmm.
Trust your gut. Trust your instinct. Most of the time, when a director hires you, casting people hire you, it's because they trust your instinct. And the more you can do your thing and trust your instinct, the more you're actually serving them. So they don't, you're allowed to ask questions for sure. Um, but they hired you because they saw that you could do it. And if you trust that, and also know that in every given circumstances, when you audition or you're working on the day or wherever, people want you to be good no matter
Yeah.
what. And just knowing that, it does all the work, because you can just trust yourself. And it's all about trust falling into yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like you all, the character Ash Weber in E7 Spiccato. How
Yeah.
did you approach a duality, and how did you balance suspense and musicality in that one? Because what it is that you used a violin in the role, and it's
Yeah.
notable for blending suspense and musicality, and it specifically highlights your classical violin training as part of the character's emotional and narrative arc.
Yeah. That was a good case of the duality of being an actor versus the character, because the character did not believe in himself at all. And it's like I think that's the shadowy side of obsession. Obsession is control.
Hmm.
And if you can let go of an obsession, that's like an act of love, right? Because love is actually kind of like a freedom. If you love something, you let it go. And Ash, I guess in this case, he was tasked with repairing his pride, like this violin that he constructed that was the best thing he'd ever made, and it was broken to pieces. And
Hmm.
he's trying to build this thing under time limit and to repair this. And then it's just interesting where the dark tunnel of obsession takes us. If we walk through a tunnel with a singular mind, where that's where it's like difficult, because I know I've been talking about like, you walk through presence as a one mind thing, but there's also the difference between like a unified mind and a singular mind. You know what I mean? If you walk through in like a tunnel, there's like an openness
Hmm.
that can rectify obsession, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Do you like? I know you like to be in movies and films, but you also like to be playing an instrument, and violin is a good choice.
Yeah.
How do you use music to unlock a character's inner world? How did you do that?
Well, it's cool how dialogue, behavior, very different. A lot of times, again, back to the whole like in a scene, you're trying to find the subtext of a scene. And it's
Mhm.
cool because music is very subtextual too. Then there's also the interpretation of music that you can also infuse with subtext. So you can play a piece infinite different ways depending on what you're trying to do. Like you can play the Tchaikovsky violin concerto. Yeah, the obvious choice is I'm trying to play this to seduce somebody, or I'm trying to like not flash somebody, hopefully, but like you're trying to dazzle.
Mhm.
But then there's some other interesting choices. Like what if I want to intimidate somebody, or like there's other choices of like you see who people are through what they do. Whatever they say is like how they want you. Wait, how they what they say is how they want you to think they perceive of themselves. You
Mhm.
know, so it's interesting to see like what people do, how they do them, and then what they say, and how all that can be different. But it's kind of like a mime, like those. It's like almost like being a silent film character too, in a
Yeah.
lot of these opportunities because you're not using your words, but you're like a silent film character. You're kind of like a magician, also a musician, but because you're trying to change the world with your playing, you want to change the atmosphere by your playing because you know you want to paint time and space. That's kind of music is painting time.
Yes.
Um,
Music
so
is
it's
life.
yeah, so it's crazy to like. It's so cool to like have the ability and the privilege and the chance to play characters that can transform space with this other tactic. Um, yeah, I think it answers the question.
Yeah, um, it does. And I'm thinking of you just playing the violin. I'm thinking, well, do you think your violin would you be able to play better with a cheap violin than an expensive one? Like, do you
Well,
have a choice of violin?
for The Walking Dead, they bought a violin for me.
Really?
They actually shipped it to me. I have it somewhere. I don't just have it in storage. I have it in a case. I just forget which room I have it in.
You
But
have, and you have one hanging on your wall there
yeah,
too.
yeah. You want me to grab it?
Yeah, why not?
Here, I'll grab it real quick. So I've had this violin for like 10 years now.
Wow.
And I got it a very good price because there was no label on the inside, and so I like having that label because violins, it's got a very like beautiful
Hmm.
back varnish color. Um, so I've played on this one for a long time. Now for The Walking Dead, they bought a violin that was probably about $1,000.
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, which is still like, that surprised me.
They
But
let
they
you
also
keep it
paint
too?
they well, I was not expecting that, but I remember they were like kind of mentioning they're like, oh, you know what? I think the only way that it would be right is if we sent Victor the violin. And I just remember one day I got because I was texting with the prop master and he texted me a shipping code. And I'm like, what's this? And he's like, violin in your chair back. And I'm like, no way. So, and it
Nice.
was funny. It's that violin that they sent still has like some of the prop blood like dried in certain areas, which is so grim. And I was also really glad because I didn't break it on my way down when I got my throat slit. I was really happy about that um, because another time, another story. But there was like this April Fool's joke I did in high school where I smashed a violin. So I was known. They were about to throw the violin away. It was like a $25 instrument, but it was really funny. It's gone viral so many times on the internet. It's been crazy, and people are always like, "Oh man, what a privileged guy to like just he's struggling," because like the whole gag was like I was doing an audition for this regional orchestra, and I kept messing up the solo, and then after the third time I would get really upset and smash the violin and run out. And so a lot of people didn't know it was an April Fool's joke. And there's also, pretty justified, but some people were upset that even if it was a joke, that you shouldn't kill a violin. But they were going to throw it out into the dumpster, and my orchestra director told me to do this as a funny joke. It's gone viral however many times. But I was so happy I didn't smash that violin, and I have it with me, and I will have it with me until maybe I'll be buried with it,
But if you could create a project that blends acting and violin, what would it look like?
Ooh,
How about yourself?
that's a very good question, because it might be happening right now.
Oh.
Somebody might have reached out, and we might be talking about this. But there's so many stories, I think, and I think it's a really fresh perspective. Because when I was still on my way, working my way around the industry, and I still am, but I remember seeing Mozart in the Jungle as a TV show on Amazon, and I loved that show because it was like really insightful about what the life is actually like for somebody who is like a gigging classical musician trying to make money and live off of playing classical music. It's a really odd career path, and it's really specific, and you meet such crazy people. So I think we need more stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get the behind the scenes and get to, the Maestro, that was a beautiful movie. Bradley Cooper directed, wrote, performed as Leonard Bernstein. Stories like that where...
Have you seen My Father's Violin on Netflix?
No, I've not.
If you can, check out My Father's Violin, and it's done in, if you can stand English subtitles, I think it's Turkish.
Yeah.
The whole movie's Turkish, but I saw it twice already. I love it.
I will check it out. Thank you.
Beautiful movie, as long as you can read the English subtitles. But
I might have seen like short reels of it now that I look it up. But yeah, there's movies like Shine with Jeffrey Rush in 1996. He won the Oscar. It's incredible.
Music and Lyrics is another one.
For sure. Obviously Amadeus.
Oh yeah.
I was raised on that. It was like every single strings camp we did. We would watch Amadeus.
Violin, another one.
The Red Violin's great. I love stories like that. I actually,
me too.
So like I was writing. There's a Gothic story that I've written about a haunted violin. So stuff like that. Because also like the Paganini of the lore. He was like the first rock star, and people thought he sold his soul to the devil. It's so crazy how there's all this like dark mysticism about music, because it's kind of like the Industrial Revolution age, like the late 1800s, early 1900s, or something that's very steampunk about music, because it's kind of like electricity. It's a force that we really don't understand so much about. Like, yeah, we get it, like decibels and wavelengths, and harmony is when wavelengths kind of match up, and dissonance is when they, we understand the science, but there's still so much that's like an X factor about how these forces influence us, why they transform space, like how the way animals react to it. It's like electricity. There's still so much so that we will never truly understand. I'm also obsessed with Tesla, so there's all these stories. I hope we get to see more live music played in film. I would like to do it too. But yeah, I would like to participate in these stories. But I think there's such a dynamic of, like even Inside Llewyn Davis is another incredible story about musicians. There's that scene where they're recording a piece. So like literally you have Oscar Isaac, and you have Justin Timberlake, and you've got Adam Driver. You got these heavy hitters all like pretending to record this piece, and seeing all these little dynamics, boom, 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 micro acting while they're trying to like outer space, and then please, Mr. Kennedy, it's like crazy. There are some notes in the Box Cone on the Walking Dead episode where I'm like, oh my god, why'd they choose that take? But it's also like when you take into account the humanity of like, this is somebody playing under duress, and these are the circumstances, and you're like, okay, all right, fucking let it go. But it's like that's the young musician in you that you're just like, the notes have to be perfect. Yeah.
what advice would you give your younger self just starting out?
Breathe. One step at a time. Surround yourself with your diet, as in what you eat, who you spend your time with, what activities you do. The more specific, the better. Like all that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Hey,
Thank you so much, Logan. I really appreciate this interview. We are going to end the stream with Logan Schmucker, and thank you so much. Bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.